We often use props in the service in different ways. But for the introduction to this message, we have to thank the Anglicans. Right across the street, if you drove up or down Bronte Road, safely driving, if you briefly looked over at their message board, you would see faith is like muscle. The more we use it, the more it grows. And when I read that, I thought, well, thank you for the introduction to this message on the book of Hebrews today. Faith is like muscle. The more we use it, the more it grows. It's sort of like pulling the rope on the bell. The more you do it, the more muscle you get. This passage, which is being read around the world today, as Debbie noted, we have some missing verses, and that's not Walton's editorship. We follow the Worldwide Lectionary, and they select passages to try and cover in 3 years the major scripture passages and themes of the Bible. And today's message is on the pivotal passage in Hebrews on faith. In verses 1 to 3, we capture the paramount definition of faith, and it provides a foundation in our life. Faith is described as confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. Confidence in what we hope for and assurance for what we do not see. Now, this is not the faith of the true believers, the ones who've had it since 1967, of another Stanley Cup coming to Toronto. In Hebrews, we don't read about the leaf faith. It is a different faith. We're told in the book of Hebrews about the elders, the ancient believers, and they are commended by their faith. You see, by faith, believers understand that this universe was not created by a roll of the dice. It wasn't a fluke. It was created with purpose, and that there is a creator. We believe that there is that power, that creator, that's more than us in the here and now. Do any of you try to be a green thumb? I imagine you're doing a lot of watering, right? Getting the hose or sprinkler out, unless you have a watering system. I just saw this morning, one of our people took a photograph in Stratford. They were there at the theater. And you know that pond, that lake in front of the theater, it's just about dry. The lack of water. In a farmer's faith, in a gardener's faith, that's what it takes to plant a seed. Because the seed is only a small part of what you hope for, what you want to see in the future. The gardener, the farmer, needs faith in sunlight, faith in rain, faith in the nutrients in the soil, and faith in the weather. That seed will grow and prosper and be harvested, and there will be abundant produce. But when we plant a seed, there's no 100% guarantee. There's only faith to move forward to plant that seed. Some of us with brown thumbs might say, oh, I'll never plant that seed. It will never grow. I'll kill it. But the faith of the gardener is it will grow. I saw another church's front lawn sign, also on the topic of faith. It says faith doesn't always make things easy, but it makes them possible. Farming, gardening is not easy at times. But the faith to plant and look after and care for what you've planted makes the possible produce come to harvest. Now, one writer has tried to put all the message of Hebrews. Hebrews is a unique book in the Christian scriptures, the New Testament. Not as unique but as Revelation, but it is set aside by itself. And one writer has put it this way about Hebrews. I want to talk to you about something profoundly powerful, faith. Faith is just not hope. It's just not blind optimism. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. It's the inner strength within us that lives within us that keeps whispering, keep on going. Don't throw in the towel. Don't let the weeds in the garden take over. Even when everything or everyone around us may be saying, give up, faith is whispering, keep going. By faith, Abraham left everything he knew, trusting in a promise he could not see. By faith, Moses stood before Pharaoh, not as a prince of Egypt, but as a servant of God, knowing that God's power was greater than the fears that were before him. By faith, David stood before Goliath, a mere boy with a slingshot and a few stones, but a heart full of trust in the living God. Now the writer continues by saying, and by faith you and I can face the giants in our lives. The giants of fear and doubt and sickness and loss, even the giant of failure. Faith is what carries us when the road gets long and steep and full of potholes. It's what sustains us when the answers don't come quickly. And it's what strengthens us when the burden feels too heavy to carry. Faith doesn't mean we will always see the path in front of us. Faith means we trust the one who guides the path. Where you live, I am sure you know it fairly well. Especially if you've lived in the same place for a long time. At night, do you turn on the lights when you're walking around? Or do you have faith to do it in the dark? Because it's always been set up like that. Now, if you have animals, it might be tricky. But think of your staircase. I know when I climb the staircase, in the dark, I can't see the final destination, the next level. All I can see is the next step. And I know in the dark, if I can get to the next step, I'll be ready then to go to the next step and the next step. And faith is like climbing a stair in the dark. You've probably done it many times before, but it's still the dark, and it's still one step after another. By faith, we can rise again. By faith, we can forgive. By faith, you can dream, build, rebuild, replant, and overcome. So whatever you're facing today, step forward one step at a time by faith. Not because of what you see, but because of who you believe in. And when we walk by faith, not by sight, nothing is impossible. Because God is already ahead of us on that stairway, on that pathway. Then, after we skip those verses that Debbie mentioned, the book of Hebrews moves into verses 8 to 16. And they have these wonderful repetitive phrases, these by faith statements. You may be familiar with them. These verses highlight the faith of Abraham, Sarah, and their descendants. By faith, Abraham obeyed God's call to leave his home for a land he would later receive as an inheritance, even though he did not know where he was going. I think this sort of natural human being approach to life, we want to have all the facts before we move ahead. Think of the big things in your life. Did you have all the information you possibly could have before you made that step? This time of year, soon, people in the congregation will be starting first year in a college, university, and trade school. And they've researched the different places, and they've investigated, and they've talked to people. But they really won't know until they get there. It's to trust and to make that step. We never have enough of the answers to move forward. But we do. We need to. By faith, Abraham lived as a foreigner in a promised land, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs of the same promise. So Abraham was living in a settled situation, a settlement. He was called to live in tents, as a migrant, if you will, in a constant journey to a promise he wouldn't really actually see fully take place. When I was sent as a student minister to Northern Ontario, I needed a place to live. And the church supplied me a farmhouse that was under construction. Lovely, out in the woods near the river. It was beautiful, but inside, it was only 2x4s. You got out of the shower and you could see the bedroom, you could see the kitchen, you could see... There were no walls. There were just the studs. Now, it took a little while to get used to that, but I never saw it completed. I just could imagine what it would look like when it was finished. And Abraham was called into that existence, to leave behind, to live in a tent, not knowing what the future would bring. By faith, Abraham looked forward to a city with foundations, or in this case, as I told you, with walls. But the scripture says it was designed and built by God. It reminds us it's important to have a goal for all of us, whatever our age or stage of life, that we have a goal, that we have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. We have a destination. Then there's Sarah. By faith, she received the ability to conceive despite her old age. The unexpected does happen. God blesses us in ways we never see coming. And so by faith, Abraham and Sarah came descendants, the creators of descendants that would be as numerous as the stars in the sand. So we never know what we will do here that will bless those who live beyond us. We may know the next generation below us, maybe the generation below that, and if we're blessed, the generation below that. But beyond that, we won't know what we do here that will bless future generations. So all these people mentioned in Hebrews died in the faith, having not received the full promises. They received promises, but not full. But by seeing and welcoming them from afar, they lay the basis, the foundation for the future. They demonstrated they were seeking a better heavenly country. God prepared a city for them. So the key themes of Hebrews is faith involves trusting God's promises. When the fulfillment is not immediately visible to you and I, to trust even as we don't see it right in front of us. By faith, Abraham heeded the voice, left behind his land, not knowing his new path. A pilgrim trusting promise over sight, stranger beneath unfamiliar skies. By faith, he pitched his tent on a promised ground, where inheritance was only whispered. With Isaac, with Jacob, sojourners all, he gazed towards a city with foundations unseen, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, Sarah found strength in the impossible, believing the giver keeps every word. And from one as good as dead, a multitude sprang, descendants unaccountable, like stars that crown the night sky, or grains innumerable on the sea's wide shore. By faith, they greeted promises from afar, wanderers confessing earth was not their home, longing not for the country behind, but for the better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he prepared for them a city eternal, still a stranger, but anchored by assurance. Unseen, I press onward by faith. The words of the poet. But take those last 6 ones with you. Unseen, I press onward by faith.